A woman can be a bus driver, can put, thousands and hundreds of people on a bus in a year, drive them safely around, but you think that this same individual is somehow inadequate, or at least based on the teachings should be submissive to the point that they can't lead a church or lead worship. I mean, it's really mind blowing. The people's voice. Welcome back. Welcome back. This is the people's voice. I am Trey Evans, and I am the people's voice. Thank you for checking me out again this week. It is greatly appreciated. As always, we want to start off with thank yous for those who have been listening and watching the podcast. It is greatly appreciated. I say this every week, but sincerely, the listenership is increasing. So I'm appreciative of that. Definitely getting more comments regarding the podcast and the topics that we're covering. So thank you again for everyone who is listening, and continue to share the information, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, having a tough time talking today. And also, as you might notice, I'm wearing the People's Voice shirt. We now have merchandise. I'll stand up for just a second here. Boom. We now have merchandise. So, please, if you have time, please check out the store. You can go to my website at Trey Evans, or you can click any of our social media links at I am Trey Evans on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and then Trey Be Talking on Instagram, and that will take you to our store. So thank you. Today, I want to talk about women being pastors in church. And this is one of those topics where, each week when I, start the podcast, some topics I'm familiar with, other topics, it's new information for me, just as it might be for many of you. And today's topic was definitely new information, not so much on the fact that I obviously visually could see that there was some type of deficiency or imbalance in churches regarding women in leadership, but had no idea that this was part of teaching and practice from the Bible. So today I'm going to be talking about why can't women be pastors? And I normally don't start the show like this, but I'm going to play a clip from a pastor named Vodi Bakum. And this is how he answered a question from a gentleman who was I'm assuming either in his church or at one of his services. And the gentleman asked on behalf of his wife why women could not be pastors. And this is what he said.
She just wanted to know why women are not allowed to preach in the church, and if a woman feels that she has the gift of preaching, why isn't she allowed to preach? Thanks.
1 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 12. I do not permit a woman to teach or exercise authority over a man. Rather, she is to remain quiet. So, because the Bible says so. And that's it.
And let me tell you something. When I saw that clip online, I think I'll play a bomb right here. It was mind-blowing, okay? That, first of all, that this was in the Bible, because for those of you who follow or, study the Bible, you know that it is the center of all conversation particularly in Christianity, when it comes to the explanations regarding beliefs and how design, so to speak, has come about of the world. And so the fact that this was or is in the Bible and is being taught and is really related to the reason why the structure of the church is the way it is, blew my mind. I mean, for me, it was mind blowing. I am not somebody who, I'm not a theologist or a theologian. So I'm not, deeply immersed in biblical teachings and terms and things of that nature. So for me, I was like, wow. But then when you look at the evidence of things, you go, oh, okay, I get it. I get it. Not that I support it, but now I understand why things are the way they are. So as always, as you know, with my podcast, I like to do it, back things up with research, right? I'm not just here to just talk about opinion and go on and on about my opinion. I want to, research the numbers and say, wait a second, let me see what the numbers say. So first thing I do, I start, doing some research. I'm looking. And sure enough, I pull up some demographics from, what is this site here? Zippia.com, right? Yes, Zippia.com. And it breaks down it breaks down pastors by gender, and this is only here in the United States now. And this kind of brings me to a point regarding some of the comments that I've received over the last few weeks, and comments have been like, well, you're talking about just one angle, or you're talking about just one segment, or you're talking about just one area or a couple of areas. And please understand that a lot of these topics that I'm talking about are very broad. I have to narrow them down to a place where it is feasible for, number one, for me to be able to break it down and communicate it, because I do have a limited amount of time for the podcast, because I don't want it to be, a 2-hour podcast. That's not the purpose of this podcast. I want to, give short bursts of information, something to get you going in terms of conversation. And then that way we can deal with multiple topics. And I think in a smaller format can consume it a lot better. So that's number one. Number two, a lot of these subjects that I'm talking about, like I said, they're very broad, but I have to narrow them down because I want to pinpoint specific areas for the purpose of the podcast. So that's why today I'm talking about pastor demographics in the United States. Now, obviously, religion worldwide, right? There are multiple religions. There are multiple forms of leadership throughout the world. But today we want to focus on the United States. So going back, today's topic is, why can't women be pastors in churches? And I looked at demographics and statistics here in the United States because Pastor Vodi Bakum and many pastors who lead churches say women can't be pastors because Timothy 1 verse 2, Timothy 1, 1 Timothy 2 verse 12 says basically that women are not supposed to be heard or leaders in churches. And I'm just paraphrasing. I'll play the clip once again from Vodi Bakum. But so now I get the information and I go, well, I got to pull the numbers because I know visually I've seen this, right? I've seen, most pastors are men, but why? And that's how I got to this subject. So here on Zippia.com, it breaks it down by gender. So here in the United States, 87% of pastors are men. Okay. basically 13% of pastors are women. So that's the gender breakdown, right? Then it goes into, average age. Average age of most pastors, is about 50, 51, 52 years old. And it then has like a breakdown in terms of, and I'll post this on my social media so you can see it as well, but it has a breakdown of gender by year. So each year, it shows the growth of pastorship or pastoralship. I hope I'm saying it correctly, but it breaks it down each year. So since 2010, this particular chart shows each year the number of male pastors has basically shrunken from since 2010 to 2019, and then the number of female pastors has increased from 2010 to 2019. So it's been about a 1% increase over the last 10 years, 12 years at this point, for women, and then a decrease of almost 1% for males. But again, the reason I wanted to talk about this because I had no idea that this was biblical, that this was written into the Bible, which is the reason why many pastors are, many churches are led by male pastors. Because I'm saying, well, wait a second. Women in this country do lead several different entities, right? So why wouldn't they be able to lead a church, right? And then they break down some of the responsibilities of a pastor, right? And so I'm saying, well, I'm reading through the responsibilities, and I'm saying, well, women can do this, right? Because like some of the responsibilities of pastor, they have to manage and provide oversight for administration, coordinate bi-yearly worship ministry nights and meetings, organize and implement structure for discipline ministries, and develop children's ministries, handouts, assist in schooling, lead worship, Bible studies. I mean, these are all things that women can do. But because of this one biblical passage, if you will, or verse, it's believed that women are not supposed to be leaders in church. And this goes on, the conversation gets really deep. I mean, I'm condensing a lot of the information that I uncovered because, again, it can get very expansive, and I'm trying to keep it as tight as possible. But again, 1 Timothy 2 verse 12. And apparently this was Paul's letter to Timothy. In that he says, I do not permit a woman to teach or to exercise authority over a man. Rather, she is to remain quiet. So women outpace men in terms of attendance in church, right? So I'm thinking from a woman's perspective, I'm saying, well, wait a second. If I'm sitting in church and the majority of us are here, why can't my leadership be reflective of me? And this goes into a deeper conversation. I don't want to, delve too much into the, I don't want to get too involved into questioning people's faiths, because this is not what this is about. This really is not. This is about whatever your faith is. Please, enjoy, live in it. That's not my position. My position is, though, that this here is, in my opinion, very misogynistic. It is riddled with submissiveness and really just flat out either call it outdated or call it ridiculous. But the fact that women can't or are not considered to be leaders in churches because of this, I'm talking about this particular verse in the Bible, because all of the research that I was doing, because I was trying to figure out, well, why can't women be pastors? And it all kept coming back to the same thing. It kept coming back to the same thing. Timothy 1, 1 Timothy 2, verse 12. Amazing. But to go back to my point, so women are generally, in terms of attendance, far outpace men than women. I'm looking at another study here from the Institute for Family Studies, and they're doing a breakdown in terms of attendance between men and women. And it clearly shows here that, men are less likely, or I shouldn't say less likely, but don't attend church as much as women. And then when you get even deeper into the breakdown, when you start talking about race, then that's a whole nother conversation, because in terms of black churches, right now we get into historically black churches, typically are led by men. But in terms of the attendance is far higher in terms of women being in the church than men. I'm looking at the study here. It says among HBCs, and HBCs are historically black churches, it says that there are less than 50 men for every 100 women. So literally there is half the men than that there is women in historically black churches, yet historically black churches are typically led by men. We have a big issue here. And, the reason why it even concerns me more than that, because it has the tone of, I said submissiveness, but also inadequacy, right? Because it's, women, I was looking at a study, just for instance, right? Just going through some of these stats. Women in the United States, I was looking at bus drivers, and it said in the United States, among bus drivers, 51% of bus drivers are males, 49% of bus drivers are women. So you mean to tell me that a woman can drive a bus? And not to say it in that way like it should be shocking, but a woman can be a bus driver, can put, thousands and hundreds of people on a bus in a year, drive them safely around, but you think that this same individual is somehow inadequate, or at least based on the teachings should be submissive to the point that they can't lead a church or lead worship? I mean, it's really mind blowing for me. And then you have the financial aspect of it, right? Because obviously there's an income that comes with leading a church. And matter of fact, you can check out one of my earlier podcasts where I talked about the business of church and kind of broke down how, money is allocated and how the business of church works in terms of revenue generation. But obviously there's an income attached to it. So now you're depriving someone of the ability to generate an income in maybe a topic or field of choice that they have interest in, basically because there's this one verse in the Bible. Matter of fact, I'm going to play it again because, and I usually don't do that, but I want you guys to hear it again. Again, this is Vodi Bakum, who's a pastor, and there was a individual in his church who asked, why is it that women cannot be pastors? And this is what he said.
She just wanted to know why women are not allowed to preach in the church, and if a woman feels that she has the gift of preaching, why isn't she allowed to preach? Thanks.
1 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 12. I do not permit a woman to teach or exercise authority over a man. Rather, she is to remain quiet. So, because the Bible says so. And that's it.
And you hear in that audio clip, you hear not only the authoritarian stance that this pastor takes, but then you hear audience members laughing and giggling at this as if it's like, well, it is what it is. You know, that's what the Bible says, so that's what we should teach. Listen, again, this is not an attack on anyone's personal faith, but a lot of this information that is being disseminated, particularly via the Bible, when it comes to women, is very misogynistic, in my opinion. Again, I'm not a theologist or a theologian or any other Theo. I'm Trey, okay? But I'm just telling you that right there, serious concern as far as my opinion. And then now I'm talking purely on opinion. I firmly believe women should be able to lead churches or any other form of entity that they want to, and they should not be subjected to basically being restrained by this one particular subject or one particular verse in the Bible. And there's multiple verses. I'm only talking about 1 Timothy 2 verse 12. Okay. Trust me, when I did the research, there's tons of other verses that they referred to in here. 1 Timothy 3 verses 1 through 3. They go on and on and on. Timothy, 1 Corinthians, verse 1 Corinthians 11 verse 3. I mean, I can go on and on and on, but I don't want to make it an attack on the Bible. What I'm basically saying is that women have the ability to lead church. In my opinion, I disagree with how this is structured, and since women pace men in attendance, I think that there should be changes to that particular policy, if you will, within the church. Now, again, this is not broken down by faith. So, in the United States and throughout the world, the largest denomination of faith starts with, I believe, Christianity, and then it's Islam and so on and so forth. But this is not broken down that way. Again, the study that I read was regarding the number of pastors in the United States. And again, just to reiterate, 87% are male, only 13% are female on average, which is, like I said, mind-blowing given the fact that women usually attend church more than men do. And then when you start talking about historically black churches, the ratios are even higher. Now, it is beginning to change quite a bit because a lot of that data has to do with the older generation. I believe, those 45 and above in terms of attendance in church, because I'm also reading a study here from Christianity Today, and it says that in terms of millennials and Generation Z, in terms of women, attendance in church is beginning to fall greatly. So women are not going into the church as the older generation did. And I believe a lot has to do with some of the teachings that have been, institutionalized in the church for so long, because the younger generation has so much more access to information than previous generations that, they can read up on this and, come to some, pretty quick conclusions. I'll read here again from ChristianityToday.com. It says, for millennials and Generation Z, it's a different story. Among those born in 1980, the gap begins to narrow to about 2 percentage points. By 1990, the gap disappears. With those born in 2000 or later, women are clearly more likely to be what they're calling nuns than men, nuns, and not nuns, but NONES than men. And basically it's saying that, because the other conversation has been, for quite some time now, that attendance in church is declining. And one of the reasons why it's declining is because women between the ages of 18 to 25, the younger generation, are not attending church as much as the previous generation did. So today, that was my take, or I should say that is what I wanted to address today on the podcast. Like I said, I had no idea that there was an actual biblical verse that was connected to the reason why so many more men led churches than women. I'm non-denominational. I am not a theologist, a theologian. And I am not immersed in biblical studies. So therefore, this was new information for me. It might be new information for some of you. It might be information that some of you knew. But in any event, give me your comments. Let me know your thoughts. Do you believe women should be able to lead churches? Do you believe women should not be able to lead churches? And if so, do you believe it's because of 1 Timothy 2, verse 12, or do you have another reason why you don't believe that should be the case? Because let me make it clear, I firmly believe that women can lead in any church of any denomination. So I want to make sure my point is clear. But that is my time for today. I don't have any recommendations or solutions. Well, I do. The recommendations is let women lead churches if they decide to, and let's, close that gap, because 87% to 13% last time I checked is way, way too big of a gap. And I'm pretty sure that there are women that want to be able to lead church and obviously have the ability and the passion, and also the know-how to deliver those messages in that setting. So that is my time for today. As always, dreams are not just for sleeping. Please wake up and live your dreams. My name is Trey Evans, the people's voice. Tell somebody about the dream. Salute.